Welcome to the Randy Gravitt Leadership Podcast, where we help you lead the hardest person you will ever lead, yourself. Here's your host, someone who believes leadership begins at home, Randy Gravitt.
Where are you? Not like where are you in the world, but where are you? It's a great question for a leader. We work with leaders here. We're talking to leaders, having a self-leadership conversation. And I think it's a very important question for you to be asking yourself all the time. Where are you? In fact, this question, if you are a Bible reader, I actually like to read the Bible, full disclosure. I think it's a really cool book, and it's pretty cool to read it, and it's got all kind of great stuff. And if you read the Bible, you'll find that the second question ever asked in the history of the world is this question, where are you? It's a question that whether you read the Bible or not, you've probably heard of Adam and Eve, first man and woman. And the Bible tells us that God has this moment where he asked this question, where are you? Now, if you know the story, Adam and Eve have eaten the forbidden fruit. They've been, they're in trouble here, right? And God comes along. He says, where are you? Now, here's what I'm pretty convinced this was not happening. There's not some hide and go seek game going on. God had not lost his kids. If you have kids, you know how easy it is to kind of, you can lose them occasionally, but it's not that God didn't know where they were. He needed them to admit where they were. And so today I'm going to ask you again, where are you? The world's going crazy right now, all kind of stuff going on. There's a global pandemic. Businesses, for some of you, it's going great. I've talked to some of the leaders we work with. They're at all-time high with their profits. And then there are other people who are out of work. Some of my really close friends, they've lost their jobs, and it's just everything's going crazy around us in some ways in our culture right now. Where are you today? Or I'll ask you in my country boy vernacular where I grew up, it's how you doing? How are you doing today? Like, how are you really doing? I want us to think about that today. Now, I always say you have to start where you are, but you don't have to stay there. And it's really good to calibrate as a leader. I told you when we, talked last week that the hardest person you'll lead is yourself. And yet if you can get this right, if you can lead you can actually add a lot of value to the people around you. They benefit from your leadership when you lead well. And if you don't lead yourself well, your people are really going to struggle and they're going to suffer from your lack of leadership. And so let's talk about how we can lead ourselves better. And I think one of the things we can do is ask this question, how are you doing? So where are you today? So last night, actually, as a matter of fact, I'm headed over to a little store nearby, and I get in my truck, and I notice that I am literally almost out of gas. And have you been out of gas before, where the warning light comes on, low fuel? Well, I'm past that. It doesn't literally say this, but it's basically like, hello, idiot. If you don't pull over and get some gas, you're going to be walking. You're going to be stranded on the side of the road. And so I go to the gas station, I fill up, and it actually, I think it was a record. It was the most I'd ever been able to put in, because I'm on empty. I'm running on fumes when I pull into this place. And as I began to think about that, I thought, how many leaders do I know right now who are running on fumes? I was thinking, I wish we had a low fuel warning light on our leadership. But that's not the way it works. It's as if we have to make sure we build in time to check our gauge and see how we're doing. And if we're not careful, we can be running on empty. And when we're running on fumes, it is so easy for our people to suffer through that. I mean, if we don't have anything to give, then it's going to be really hard for our people to benefit from our leadership. So today, again, I want to ask you this question. How are you? You do have to start where you are, but you don't have to stay there. And over the next couple of episodes, we're going to talk about assessing today. But next week, I'm going to give you some ways to attack some of these areas that we're going to talk about. So as you think just in general today, are you filled up right now? Are you brimming? Are you overflowing? Or are you affected by the circumstances around you, the events of our world, some of the challenges that you're facing, and you feel like, you know what, Randy, I'm running on empty right now. And so I want to give us a little bit of way to calibrate on this idea of how are we doing, or where are you today? So I'll use, I mentioned a minute ago, the gauge in my truck, the gas gauge in my truck. I think it's a good picture for us as leaders. And I want to give you an opportunity to assess your current reality by using this picture of a gauge. So if you picture the fuel gauge in your vehicle, you have, when it's full, it says F. When it's E, it's over there. Somewhere in the middle is half a tank. You got a quarter, 3/4. I want you to use that visual picture today. In fact, if you will go to, or when you're on the website, randygravitt.com, if you'll just click on the media tab and go to the podcast section, we've got a free resource on there for you that's going to help you analyze some of of what we're going to talk about here in these next few minutes. So I want to get you to think about these gauges in 3 buckets. I think there are 3 areas right now that, a lot of areas you could think about, but 3 in particular I want you to focus on today. The first one is this idea of how are you doing emotionally? How are you doing emotionally? As I think about all the challenges that we're all facing right now, and as I think about leaders in particular that I talk to, there are so many leaders I bump up against, and their energy level, they've told me lately, my energy, I just feel like I don't have the energy that I had when, we're coming to the office every day and meeting, and now there are teams that are not meeting together, and there's, all kind of stuff going on. There's challenges with the current circumstances. And if we're not careful, it causes our energy to wane. Or maybe you're just in a challenging situation with a person and it's actually draining you emotionally. Maybe you've got somebody on your team or somebody in your workplace, maybe somebody even in your family right now who is just challenging you, and emotionally that person is not bringing life into you. They are sucking the life out of you maybe. And so how's your energy level? You might even think about it on that gauge. How's your excitement level right now? Are you optimistic about the future? Are you excited about what's coming up? We're going in, what are we we're in the 4th quarter of the year. And as you think about that, are you ready to dominate the 4th quarter? Or are you just thinking, man, I'm ready for this game to be over and let's move on to the next year? I think it's important for us to assess, like, what is our emotional level of I've got a friend who says, are we buoyant? Do we have buoyancy to our leadership, to our life? And if you think about a buoy on the ocean, when or in a lake, anytime there's a wake or waves around those buoys, they're tethered to something pretty strong, to the bottom. They're anchored to a dock or something. And no matter how much the water comes and how much they're under temporarily, they always continue to bob back up and they're buoyant. And so as you're thinking about your own emotions right now, are you buoyant, or are you frustrated and irritated and aggravated and all those aided words that are just emotionally challenging, not just for you, but the people around you? If you're frustrated all the time, you might not like it, but you're letting some of that spill over to the others. And so how are you doing, or where are you when it comes to your emotional health right now? So that's one area I would challenge you to think about and assess, like, what's really going on with you. Here's another one, this idea of not just emotionally, but how are you doing physically right now? How are you doing physically? Are you stronger than you have been? Are you more rested than you have been? Are you taking care of your nutrition right now the way you should be? Are you fit to lead, I guess is a good way for us to say it. Are you exercising the way you should be? Are you moving, hydrating? I mean, fill in your blank, pick it out. And maybe some of us are frustrated emotionally because we're actually not taking care of ourselves physically. I mean, it's easy for us to be irritated emotionally when we haven't rested physically. And so for some of us, maybe one of the best things we could do for our team is to go take a nap and rest a little bit. For some of us, we've been away from our teams, but for some of us, we haven't. I mean, you're still in the grind of whatever it is you're trying to do in your enterprise, your sports team, your nonprofit that you lead, whatever it is that you're leading. If you're not careful, you can get run down, and even though it feels like the pace is slowed a little bit, I've had so many people tell me over the last few weeks, I feel like I'm working harder than I ever have before. I had dinner last night, right after I filled up my tank. I had dinner with a guy last night, and we talked about it, and he said, I feel like I'm working harder than I ever have before. It's just been crazy. And so I would challenge you right now to ask this physical question. How you doing with your rest? How you doing with your exercise? your hydration, your nutrition, all those things that are going to determine whether you're going to remain fit to lead. Where are you? Is your tank full, or are you feeling like, man, I am running on empty a little bit here when it comes to this physical area? So we have a couple of them so far. We have emotional, we have physical, and let me give you one more. Let's talk about this idea of being relationally healthy today, or being our relational tank being full. So how you doing when it comes to your relationships all of a sudden? Some of us, we're with the people that we love the most more than we ever have been right now. And so a question I have for you is, do the people who know you the best love you the most? It's a question I ask myself all the time. I want to make sure that the people that I'm around the most, they know that they can count on me, and they love me the most. They not just love me, I would say, do they like me? And so when you think about it, when you look at your tank, or if I could go to your husband or your wife or your son or daughter and say, hey, is dad filling your tank right now? Or is he kind of draining your tank right now? How are those relationships around your life right now? How are you doing with your spouse? How are you doing with your kids? How are you doing with your extended family? And maybe some of us, the best thing we could do would be to, call our mom or our dad, or we could reach out to one of our kids. Maybe it's somebody on your team that relationally there's a little bit of strain right now with you and them, and you feel like, man, the tank's kind of running low, and you haven't really invested a lot in that relationship lately. I hear leaders sometimes say it's lonely at the top, and I disagree with that. I think loneliness is a choice. I think when leaders choose to isolate themselves, then it's lonely. But no one is at their best when they're in isolation. And I want to challenge you today. If you look at your tank and you say, you know what, man, I'm not in community. I'm not in relationships. I'm not with the people around my life the way I need to be. I need to take a different approach to that. One of the terms we've heard during the whole COVID thing is that we should be socially distanced. And when I first heard that, I thought that's a weird way to say that. I understand that we maybe at times have needed to be physically distanced, but I don't know that we ever need to be socially distanced in our lives. I think leaders understand that people matter most. And if it weren't for people, then you really wouldn't have a job as a leader. It's the people around you that you have this opportunity to add value to that really that make you valuable as a leader. And so I want to challenge you really again to invest in those relationships. And for some of us, we may need to take a look at our calendar. And if all we've been doing the last few weeks is learning or spending time with ourselves, or, when you're at home, are you really with the people that you're with? And if it's no, maybe your tank is running a little empty on the relational side. So again, let's ask ourselves this question often. Where are you? How are you doing? Is your tank full, or is your tank empty? If you are running on fumes, then you have nothing to give the people that you lead. And so I want to leave you with just a little bit of a call to action here as we close our time today. We're going to be back with you in a couple of days. We're going to talk about some of the ways that you can actually build goals into your organization and finish the year strong. You're not going to want to miss that. We bring our coach in on Wednesday. But today, I want to remind you, if you will go, when you're on randygravitt.com, if you'll go to the media tab, hit that podcast section, you'll find this free resource. It's going to help you really assess how you're doing. We've got a great little tool for you there. It's free. If you'll just go check that out, that'd be fantastic. And then next week, when I come back, I'm going to give you some ways that you can not just assess what we've talked about, but to attack those areas. But this week, here's my call to action. Go download the resource, and then I want you to schedule a 30-minute meeting with yourself. Put it on your calendar, sometime maybe even in the next 24, 48 hours. Put that meeting on your calendar, download that resource, and go get alone with yourself and ask yourself these questions that we'll have for you and assess how you're doing emotionally, physically, and relationally. I'm convinced if you'll keep your tank full, you will be able to give your best to the people around you. And when leaders get better, everything around them gets better. So let's go make a difference this week by leading ourselves first, making sure we fill our tanks.
Thanks for listening to the Randy Gravitt Leadership Podcast. Please help us spread the word by sharing today's episode with your friends and coworkers. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel on Spotify or through iTunes. You'll find all the links on the media tab at randygravitt.com. Now, let's go apply what we've learned and lead ourselves well. Remember, leadership begins at home.